It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consultant, or you can go to my website, emailrevealer.com. But if you need to get a hold of me, you can just contact me, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, if you like the show and you don't catch it every night, if you go to Patreon, Opperman Report Patreon, all the shows you hear Monday to Friday on AM/FM radio, you can find there at Patreon. Plus, that's some exclusive content. You can find all the ads cut out, commercial free. If you like, once again, the archives are free at Spreaker.com. There's a chat room. I do a live show there every Friday night, exclusive. And there's you get an email notification when I upload new content. And I do play repeats every single night, so you get a lot of content over there for free. Now, our guest today, Richard Kerr, coming to us from Texas. If you go to Spreaker.com and look through the archives, I've done several previous interviews with Richard Kerr. And he's got a very compelling story. He grew up in Ireland in an orphanage, a Kerr school for boys, where there was a lot of tragic abuse of these children in there, so should be taken care of. Instead, they were exploited and trafficked. Mr. Kerr, in particular, was trafficked by Roy Cohn, the notorious New York attorney, who at one point was the attorney for President Donald Trump. So, Richard Kerr, are you there?
I am, and it's good to hear you again, Ed.
Yeah, it's always good to have you back. Remind the audience, though, who is Richard Kerr?
I'm Richard Kerr. I was born in Belfast, the north of Ireland. That was under the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. And I was born there in 1961. And 1966, I was transferred to an orphan, the first orphan for the age group I was in. I was 5, and the name of that facility was Williamson House.
How was your treatment at that facility?
Would you say that again, please?
How was your treatment at that facility?
When I was first taken there at the age of 5, the first maybe year or two, it was obviously very confusing for me.
Yeah.
Because I was removed from my parents, and I just that was the feeling in the first couple of years, and then obviously something began when I was around. It was around about 8 years of age, and that's when the abuse started to take place inside the facility at that particular time. Over a period of time, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I would say, from the age of 8.
Okay, and I'm not confused, right? You were at Kinkera, right?
I was transferred to Kinkora when I was 14.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, I thought I was mistaken there for a minute.
Yeah. I was in the state homes since the age of 5 up to the age of 18. I was under their control.
And why don't you give us an idea? And part of the issue with all this is that the military intelligence, the MI5, MI6, were covering up for this too, as well, right?
Yes. Well, this is where I'm going to explain, because you could read articles out there, third parties give their opinion. Well, what I'm going to share some information is on my experience. And I think experience work goes a lot further than the self-knowledge of other people's opinion. The experiences was at that age, I had no insight of what the world was around me. So as the abuse progressed in Winston House at that age, it suddenly became the world I just knew. And it was a normal world. It was normal to feel that way. It was normal to accept that way. So that's what we would call the grooming process. And, it took a number of years. This is the way I was taught how to love someone or to be loved. And it was in these sexual ways. So I think when I was trafficked out of Williamson House to certain areas, there were men that I was introduced to through the friends who trafficked me, and they became more of a kind of an uncle kind of situation where they became a parent for me, but they were taking me into situations where I would be abused, like certain seaside resorts, hotels, and I'm talking from looking back at all of this makes clear sense to me now. And then they would return me either on the same day, but sometimes they would not return me for 2 to 3 days. The way they would do that, they would bring me back, and they would the staff members would put it in their logbook that he had left to go out with family members. And that's the way they worked that system. So as a graduate on, around about 14 years of age, July of 1975, but I need to step back on this because of one of these videos that has just surfaced. He was one of the head house masters of Williamson House. And that video just surfaced in the last 4 to 5 weeks.
And it's a fellow named Eric P. Witchell.
Yeah, Eric Witchell. He was convicted, and he had all jurisdiction over Williamson House on both sides. This big, large home was divided into 2 parts, and there were Catholics and Protestants. And the reason I'm bringing up the Catholic and Protestants, as some of your listeners may not be aware of the troubles, we call it, or the war that was happening in Belfast. And I am leading into your question here, but please bear with me. This is not something simple. This is a process of what they had done over the years back then. And so Eric Witchell was the house master in charge of that place. It was divided into 2. He had abused me on a number of occasions in his flat upstairs, where he had a special flat office inside the facility. And he would bring not just me, he brought other children up there as well. And he would isolate the children, and that's what he did. And I know the name of these children who are adults today. And so at that stage, he had connections with the police and the army. Okay? He also had connections with the hush masters that were running the other brothel. And I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word brothel.
Okay.
It was the child's brothel, Kincora. Okay? It's something they didn't want to advertise, but it was a child's brothel. And so, but he was involved with that, and he had me transferred with the arrangements with other staff members to have me transferred to the Kincora Boys Home at the age of 14. And then I was introduced to Mr. Maines, William McGrath, Raymond Semple, and a few others there, Mark Hamilton. And he was not a house master, but he did make visits on occasionally when Joe Maines was taking some of us out of the facility, and then he would be there waiting for us to be returned back.
Real quick, Richard, in this video, this YouTube video of Eric P. Witchell, did you learn anything new from watching that?
Oh, I learned a lot of things new. First of all, he said that I had lied about his situation with me, and it's laughable, you know. The people who did that interview, I got to know them after that, and they explained that they have been on this for the last few years, and they've done their own investigation, and they found the evidence that clearly states of what he had done to me. An example of that evidence, he traveled out of 50 miles of Belfast to visit me. He had told the police that the reason he had to dress up like a priest to get in to visit me is that they wouldn't let him in. And that's exactly what happened. Now, why would somebody travel 50 miles to visit me in Malaya? He called it the detention center. It wasn't a detention center. It was called a safe center. To put a child there who's needed to be under protection. But he traveled to visit me and got into the facility. And I asked him the question, why are you dressed up like a priest? And very quietly he says, they wouldn't have let me in. And I said, I didn't invite you. Now, why would somebody go out of their way to do that? And then when I left that facility, or was discharged from that facility, the social workers had to find a place for me. So they decided to replace me back in Winston Heights again, after Kincora. Okay? So, and who was involved in that was Eric Rutschow. He's the one who encouraged my return. That's why he put me up in his flat. He very, very quietly said, no, I didn't harm him. But why would he put me up in his bedroom? Okay? I mean, he said, I hadn't this is before he was convicted with the 2 offenses against the other 2 children.
Let's stop right there, because they talk about in the video that he was convicted already, but you're saying that there's been new charges? He's been convicted again?
No. He was only convicted at the same time with Joe Maines, Raymond Semple, and William McGrath. Right. Him and another 2 headmasters from that Winston House. There were 3 of them convicted there for abusing boys in 1979. Okay? The reason is that they were a lesser charge. He was signed a non-disclosure form and a plea bargain that he would not expel or talk about anybody else who was involved. That was the agreement. And so what happened was that when he was he was questioning about when they were questioning him about me, they said yes, we believe Richard because of the details, the effort of closing him down, the effort of hiding Richard, and the effort for why would this man go out of his way to make it special treatment for Richard. And the fact is that they knew about the Liverpool connection, the trafficking.
Right.
And he said he had nothing to do with churches or anything else. But if you go deeper into this, you could see that he was a monk, M-O-N-K. He came from a church. He said he just walked the streets of Belfast and was offered a job working in Winston House. Very odd for somebody to say that they've never been involved in a church, but the church in Liverpool put him up in their flat where they would rent those flats out outside the church. Because how do I know that? He bought me there. That's how I know that. I know about his flat in Liverpool. I know everything while I was under the social services. Okay? So there again, there was a cover-up. They never wanted to expose the Winston House experiences because then it would have led back to the beginning and how this all took place. So it would have widened the inquiry. Their goal was to not widen the inquiry, was to narrow the inquiry. It's like what we were listening to in the court with Maxwell and Thing.
Right.
What they're very good it's a wider picture. But their goal is the courts and the judges and everybody else is to narrow it down, blacken it out. You know, like you see black lines on a report, that's how they proceed with their court trials. And that's because they don't want that out. It's called sensitive information. But it's not sensitive information regarding the victims. It's sensitive information regarding the government.
Now, Richard, wasn't there an investigation recently, and they concluded in a report that the case was mishandled and there was intelligence factors causing suppression of the information?
Yeah, there was an HIA report. There was an inquiry set up back then. The last one, there was actually 3 reports, 3 inquiries into Concora. Okay? The first 2 inquiries into Concora is that when they discover that Richard's out of the country, we can start opening an inquiry. We can start saying this and that. He's no longer run. So they open up an inquiry to find out certain other details, other members of the paramilitary groups like the UDA, the Irish Republican Army, or the UPF, the also volunteer fighters. So we're looking, and they class those as terrorist groups. Okay, but you got to look at the time period. They were still having war going on. They were still having troubles going on in the 1980s. Okay, this is when all these inquiries flopped up everywhere. It was also a way of levering certain politicians to come to the table. So when the government decided to say, well, we're going to open an inquiry up, suddenly those who were involved in it suddenly are panicking. So now they can use that as leverage to get distract information. So it was one way of saying we're going to open an inquiry. It never actually happened. They'll open it up and close it down. And then they'll reopen it again when people don't get in line, like MPs, politicians, police departments, and they don't follow the government, whatever they say that they need them to do. And then they'll use this blackmailing of, we're just going to open another inquiry into Concora.
And Richard, people shouldn't think this is so far-fetched because one of the MPs, I believe it was an MP, Colin Wallace?
Colin Wallace was the Towson Army psychological, working in the psychological warfare.
And he tried to report this stuff and expose this stuff, and what happened to him?
Well, Mr. Wallace was in Ireland at the time, the North. I believe he entered there in 1970, 73, 74. And then he had stumbled on an investigation that on the news media that he was investigating certain members of the Orange Order were visiting Concora. And basically what happened was he stumbled on it. He wasn't looking for it, but he stumbled on it through those who were being investigated for terrorist acts.
Right, and this Orange Order, that was there's a militant Protestants. Richard, the Orange Order were militant Protestants?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And because of the graphic of the locations, so that's how Colin Wallace stumbled on it. So, but under his clause, under his codes, he cannot revolve any information directly because of the signing of those legal documents, the Secret Act.
Right.
And so he tried to leak it out to certain newspapers. And that's how he was trying to peel this onion. He was trying to drip it out to some degree. He got contact with other people that were involved who knew about this as well, and they were also trying to leak this out. And then eventually, when he was, okay, we got to back up here, Ed.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on Colin Wallace, but ultimately he was framed for a murder, imprisoned for many years, just recently was exonerated, got out, and he's right back in the fight.
Yes. What happened, I need to explain the facts. They had an operation going that was called the Pimpico operation in Concora. I know of this. And what happened was it was set up in the just around about the 70s, because the war broke out in 69. And the start of that war was through Bernadette Devlin. Okay? So they brought the army in. The Catholics demanded that they wanted the army in. So when they wanted the army in, things turned the opposite direction. You remember we all clapped our hands, they all clapped their hands in Iraq and say, oh, the U.S. Army's here. Great. Ha, ha, ha. You remember that?
Oh, I remember
and
that.
what happened a year later?
Yeah.
Okay? You had bombs going all over the place. You're walking down the street, you didn't know what was happening. Okay? It was called a surprise attack. They trained us in these areas, you know. So, anyway, they set up an operation called the Pimpico operation. It was between 1970 to 75. When Colin Wallace was leaking out the information on some of this, he had his superiors caught on to it, and then MI5 was also informed of it, and then they tried to attack his character ability. And so they removed, and then he was removed out of Northern Ireland, okay? So what's important here, 75. Okay, so what they did was, during the 75, when they were removing Colin Wallace out of there, they were also removing the residents from Kincora out of the residents of Kincora, out of there too in 75. They left one or two of them, and I don't think they left one or two of them. They were just the first two that were new into this. And then that's when I was transferred. So they redid it again. They reset the operations, but this time they learned how to fix things. You know, they had fixers in there. So that is the point I'm making, is that they got rid of Colin, and then as they were doing their operations in 75, they were sending us out to certain locations and certain orange orders, members of the politicians, and it was just it was a rerun of what happened with me in Winston Heights.
Right, because Richard, it wasn't just a matter of these men taking advantage for their own pleasure. There was also blackmail operations going on.
Yes, and that's what I want to put. I've gotten over what happened to me. Well, I never get over it, but I've dealt with it, okay? And the point is the motivation behind it. People would say, well, you know, they like to have sex with cheerleaders. Yes, I understand. We have that problem in the world today. I know that. But this was not their motivation. The fixers, I call them, the puppet masters, okay? They were the ones who were organizing it. And that's why they had these Peter Fear, some of them, on their payroll. We haven't gotten into the money yet. But maybe... Go ahead. Do you have another question? So that's what happened. That's the second operation. That's what happened with Colin Wallace. And then, as the last inquiry was going into process, they wanted to lock Colin away. So they stuck a body in the back of his car, accused him of murder, and tried to set him up. And he's not just the only one on their hit list. There's others that I can name. And I haven't, you know, there's others that you know about, yes, but there's other names that you don't know about.
Richard, let me ask you this, because we're about halfway in as far as time goes, and you wanted to talk about some new court cases going on. What's going on in the court now?
Yes, I got a high court case. I have been battling with this case for 8 years, okay? The problem with this case is I am being blocked every way you can. Lawyers are trying to get motions in, and the defense is given free pass in every area. And so I'm having to look at this in a more, I'm having to look at the whole system is over there is corrupt. The problem we have over there, Ed, is that the lawyers are being paid to some degree by the government bodies who they're suing. Does this make sense? Plus, they say the physical war is over, but the political war is not over. And this is what's happening, is that we're looking more into it. Is Richard being used as a political weapon more than trying to get him justice? If you get Richard justice, you close down the political agenda.
Oh, gotcha.
You're getting the point here, you right?
Yeah.
Why do you think I have so much of those journalists contacting me who are working? And let me give you also, we'll get into the Roy character, okay?
Roy Cohn.
I'm jumping here, but there are, 40 years of this. It's hard to squeeze it in one little box. Please understand that, Ed.
No, you're fine.
The Roy character. Now, you and I had talked about Roy the last time, but I don't believe I mentioned Nick Robinson, did I?
No, I don't know who that is. Who is that?
International CNN.
Who is it?
Nick Robinson, the journalist from CNN, International CNN.
I'm
Nick
not
Robinson?
familiar. I'm not familiar with him, no.
No, I didn't mention it. He flew to New York. He's from London. And then he flew to Dallas regarding Roy. And he's the guy who goes to wars with a hat on and does journalists. It's called, he works for International CNN.
Okay.
Okay? All right? His name is Nick Robinson. Okay? He flew to Dallas to do an interview with me.
Okay.
And to be proven in that, I got his personal private number. If you ever want it, I'll let you know it. The point is that my counselor, Stuart Couch, who is has been involved in my case for the last 9 to 10 years, helping on the other side of this thing. He was there. He also interviewed him. Stuart Couch. They did a camera shot. They did recordings, everything else. So they go back, and this was done about 6 years ago. And they go back to London, because that's where their station is based out of. And then, believe it or not, the government got to them and said no. And they also interviewed Colin Wallace, Nick Robinson did. Okay? And so what Nick told me, he said, I did some investigation into your case, Richard. We also found another situation like yours was done, who was living in Ireland and was transferred to Australia. I said, really? He said, yes. This is not the first time that we have come across something like this to be used in a war for propaganda. But they never aired that. They never aired the Roy Cohn video. What they did was, we're not going to air it right now, but we're going to hold on to it, and we'll let you know when to air it. It hasn't been aired yet. Okay? So talking to you was not the first time talking to someone about that person. That person was connected to Fred Ferguson. He was one of my abusers. He became one of the handlers as well. They all stayed at the Europa Hotel. And the problem with the Europa Hotel was the most bomb hotel in Europe. I was taken there before I was given a job there. I knew the manager because the Harper Brown, the general manager of the Europa Hotel, knew these characters. Okay? And that's how I was given the job there. And my assignment role was, you are to be in the front, and whoever comes in, take their information, go to the bar area, and find out more about them, and then provide it back to us. And that's what happened. And that's how Roy I was introduced to Roy, okay? Because he was in the bar area. He was with someone. I don't know who that person was. He just smiled, but he never said a name, okay? I knew Roy because at that particular time, Mr. Ferguson says, this is Roy, one of the famous American lawyers. That's the title that I was told. And the reason I could understand that, because they didn't speak my language. They didn't have an Irish accent. They had an American accent. Okay, so I was convinced because of the accent. All right? And then what happened later on, the arrangements and everything else, that they had some situation going on in New York City, and then I was taken out there one time for a visit, and I have a picture of me standing outside Wall Street with one of their characters, and I've never put that picture out. So it's there outside the law office. Okay? So, certain things I do have evidence on. And
Richard, let me ask you this real quick. Have you ever tried to contact that CNN reporter, that Nick Robeson, and ask him, hey, how come it didn't air?
I haven't yet. No, Stuart Couch, my counselor, by the way, who flew with me to London, who was involved in doing Channel 4 when they came over here twice, and the BBC, when they came over here twice. Now, why would they keep coming back, Ed? All right? So what happened was, answering your question, Stuart made contact with him, and he just responded. Stuart made contact with him, says, the context that we given you, you do not put that out without our permission. If you're going to hold on to it, let us know. If you decide to put that out, let us know. And that was our last contact.
Okay. Now, you said to me before the interview that you wanted to clear up a lot of misconceptions, a lot of mistakes and confusion about this case.
Yes, there's a lot.
Take your time. Take your time. Go ahead. Start with the first one.
The first one is this: when they opened up that operation and reset it up again, there's a confusion that a lot of the abuse just took place inside the facility of Kincora. But if there may have been a few incidents that took place inside the facility, because yes, I am aware of those incidents. But their operation was not based on entrapping people to go into Kincora, because they couldn't. I know from my experience, this would not have been foolproof. Because if you entrap one person, that person's going to tell someone else not to go.
Gotcha.
So you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't take a rocket science to figure this out. So what they were doing was, to clear some matters up, they were using the word boy. And then they would label the boy, but not the name.
Right.
And they would put S on the name of the boy. I'll give you an example, because this can be proven if you're looking for it, okay? They said, we talked to one of the boys from the Springfield Road area, right? And then they said, we talked to one of the boys from this particular area, okay? No, it's the same boy. The boy from the Springfield Road is me. The boy from Winston House is me, and the boy from Kincora is me. But they want you to read it and see it as more of a confusion, a scatter. So you'll be scratching your head going, oh, wait a minute, Richard says this, Richard says that. Oh, I can't figure that out. The reason they titled me the Springfield Road Boy is because their organization, one of their Laffy House, I call it, up there, were located next to the barricades of the Army in the Catholic area. And some of their Army captain was entrapped in one of his residences Well, he took me there. And the police got to know about it because that's how they couldn't have titled me the Springfield Road Boy unless the incident happened on the Springfield Road. Okay? But they didn't realize I was being controlled by the postmasters in Kincora when that happened. And then they talked about a 15-year-old boy was found in a hotel in Lawrence. Unfortunately, that 15-year-old boy who was being investigated by Detective Scully was me. I was a 15-year-old boy. Okay? So they like to use the Freud smarties out there, and they're trying to figure out what colors they are. That's what they were doing. The whole scandal was based on Stephen's death and me. Everything you read, you suddenly narrow it down to who, and then you get to the point, who really got abused here? How many boys were affected by this? And that's why they went on the process of hiding the truth. And it's called...
Richard, how many children do you think were abused here? Hundreds.
Abused in Winston House? I'd say at least in Winston House, because I know their names, I'd say at least 12. Okay. Kincora, I'd say probably 7. That's about it. 7. 4 of them were affected by William McGrath inside Kincora, and us 3 were the ones who were being trafficked outside of Kincora and the country. Living here is evidence enough for myself. Who's that? And someone else. And and then you go to the reports, because that last inquiry, think about this. If you want to invite and give people a free range to share what happened, why would you give the red carpet to Richard and not the red carpet to the other boys? Why would you do that? Huh? Why would you, we're willing to put Richard up in a hotel for 2 weeks. But when the other boys were going on during their Zoom meetings with them, or ones who are still living there, let's say, you're not that, we're really not have anything interested in what you have to share. Because the point is that they get your information. And then they'll manipulate your information. And then they'll get some journalists out working for their system to write certain articles for their agenda. That's how they operate. Colin Wallace is very aware of this. I know Brian Cameron and all of the others are aware of these things. That's how they do it. And that's exactly what they did with me. And then when it came to ask for all information and all documents, they thought they had me over. I was willing to go, even though I was taking a big chance. At the last moment, 24 hours before my departure, they informed the lawyers, or the solicitors and the barristers, that we are not going to release the files that Richard is requesting. Because they thought I was already going to go on that plane. So I decided, no, they either release it all. I'm not going to go in there where I'm being controlled to tell half of my story and then be closed off. And in the end, before I didn't go, after I didn't go, Ed, they were very, very nasty. Very nasty with me. They started saying, oh, the people that he went out with made it up. He made it up here, made it up there. But you know, I have to give them credit. In their findings, on the end of it, they said, yeah, we believe Richard was abused and used and abused all around the place. That was it. That was our last report on me. Right? and if he wants his 100,000, he can have it. And I said, no, I'm not, no, because you see, they'll get you to sign a form, a government form, and if you accept anything, you have to agree to that form. And as you know, as a lawyer, I think you worked in some law, right?
I'm a private investigator. Well, I'm paralegal too, but
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you know, if I sign on that dotted line, they're sipping up me, and if I violate that, I could be liable.
Richard, let me ask you this real quick because we are getting late.
Okay.
You put me in touch with John McCann. I've had him on the show before, and he has some new information he wants to share too. He can come on in a couple of weeks. But what's the new information that he has?
Well, he had the information on some of his handlers that, you know, John, as a child, he was never in a state home, but he had evidence to convict certain members, and he realized that some certain members were part of the ring that I was dragged into. He could never have known that unless I had known the names. He confirmed it. And what I'm saying is, Richard, obviously what happened to you, how did you know that guy's name? I said, well, it's because I was introduced to him. And I'll show you how I went. So I think there's certain other information that he wants to come out about certain lawyers.
Okay.
In Belfast, by the way, who are appearing as if they're on your side, and we're finding out more and more details that, no, they're working for them. Okay? This is not paranoia. I'm not delusional. You know, there are things I can't say at this stage, again, on these other things, but there's other people that are walking some of those streets in London, and there needs to be accountability.
Yeah, that's a good question. Even this fellow in the doorway.
Imagine that man today, a month ago, and you know the reason why he's getting a lot of high ratings is because he mentioned my name, and he knows damn rightly. And if you listen to the interview again, he brings me up again, and the guy who interviewed him didn't even ask about Richard.
No, but
he just said, what about the Liverpool connection? And then he turns around and says, well, you know, as I said before, I put Richard up in my... But he didn't ask about Richard. He's slipping up. And he has... The reason I speak on him now is because there is a possibility that we will file a suit. If I file some kind of lawsuit against this character and what he did to me and the others, even though he doesn't have anything, probably all those actions are probably hidden under a different name. The point is, it will open it up.
Now, Richard, if he was convicted, how come he's out of jail now? Why is he out of prison now? He doesn't look that old.
He was convicted for the least offenses. And they do that because if they can charge someone with a person who has no information, very little information, who only can share on a norm of the abuse or the harm they had, then they will use that as a way where no one can exploit or find out more information. So he was charged with a very small offenses. And they even put a year when those charges were there because they want to take the real stuff, what's going on, out of the picture of the inquiry. So I think he got 2 years and he was out in 12 months.
Wow.
Then he had to report to the sex offender registry. But here's what he said on the interview. And he's really opened himself up here, Ed.
Okay.
He said, when I see children, I'll go a different direction. Well, let me tell you what he did. We got evidence. When he left the prison, do you know where he went? He went to England.
Okay.
And the first thing he did, he went and got a job working with deaf children. Said, oh, I'll never see any deaf children. And that's in the records. And when they found out 3 or 4 months later that they have hired somebody who just got out of prison for pedophilia against children, how in the hell did he was able to get past that and go through that red tape?
Okay, Richard, we only have about 7 minutes left. So what are some of the other misconceptions and incorrect facts out there you want to correct?
Well, as I say, I want some accountability on this. I'm trying. It's gotten to a point where I may have to speak now more than trying to wait for courts over there to do what they're supposed to do, and are being controlled by the government. So that's what I'm just trying to say, is that there's an enormous attempt to muddy the waters, and where people are complacent. But they need to just look into this. This is bigger. I know what they did was wrong to me. I put that aside. But I'm not on this call for that. I'm on the call for the fact that they can think that they can get away with this and hire these pedophilia guys to go into children's homes and work under their payroll and to set up certain things in wars to bring leverage people to the table, like the Peace Accord of the Good Friday Agreement. And they're using me today on that, based on that Good Friday Agreement again.
Are there any other? Yeah, I'm here. Any other misconceptions or inaccuracies you want to correct?
No, that's all I'm going to say at this moment. I appreciate you, and I appreciate those listeners, and we'll just keep up the good fight and just keep the journey on, whatever happens.
Yeah, we've covered this.
I don't think they could do any worse to me than they already did.
Yeah, and we've covered this with other guests, Colin Wallace and this fellow here, John McCann. And
well, you know, the video of Colin Wallace came out called "The Man Who Knew Too Much."
Didn't know that.
I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, that came out not so long ago. It's a very good video. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
There's a lot of information in there. Shows you how they operate.
Gotcha. Okay, Richard, thank you so much for coming back. I know how difficult it is to talk about all this, and it is a complicated story. So if people would go to the archives...
Well, that's the reason why I came on.
Yeah.
It can be complicated in a way that they would like it to be complicated by scattering it all over the place.
Right, right. And
so let's look at this. Very simple. This was a child, and I was in the state homes, and they had control over me. And I believe today some of this stuff where they're still having some control over me, regardless of where I'm located. Okay?
Well, Richard, have you ever feel like your life threatened or in jeopardy?
Oh, it has been. It has been. My consulate has received letters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He has filed those letters. The lawyers have them. But I haven't done it yet. You know, and I'll be frank with you, they know exactly what toothpaste I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, you know, there's nowhere to run. If they want to do anything to keep me quiet and shut me up, they can do it anytime they want.
Well, that's so
I know
true.
how these people are. Okay? Well, at my age, and this story, where they've tried to confine it, and narrow it down and water it down, that's on them. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well,
and,
once again, the audience can go back to the archives and just Google Richard Kerr, Roy Cohn. That comes up right away. Colin Wallace, this fellow John McCann. Who else did you send me to put on the show? An author, right?
Yes, Andrew
what?
Louis. Yeah, he's the book writer.
Andrew Laurie. Yeah, that was another good
certain
example too.
information that he's written the book on, certain things that happen.
Gotcha.
And I will go into that at another time.
Richard, thank you so much. Okay, anything new comes up, give me a call. Put you right back on the air, okay?
All right. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
Thank you. Bye.